The Shattered Mirror. The rain drummed against the window panes of Detective Vincent Graves's office, its relentless rhythm a backdrop to the storm that was about to engulf his world. It was late evening, and Vincent had just poured himself a glass of whiskey when a knock interrupted his solitude. "Come in," he called, his gravelly voice echoing in the dimly lit room. A man entered, soaked to the bone, his face shadowed with anguish. He introduced himself as Daniel Caldwell, a wealthy businessman with an immaculate reputation. But tonight, he wasn't the picture of composure. He clutched a manila envelope like it contained the last fragments of his sanity. "Detective Graves," Daniel began, his voice trembling, "I need you to find the truth. I suspect my wife, Eleanor, is betraying me." Vincent, a man whose profession had made him an unwelcome guest in the chambers of marital trust, leaned back and studied Daniel carefully. "What makes you think that?" Daniel slid the envelope across the desk. Inside were photographs of Eleanor meeting a man in secluded cafes, laughing in ways Daniel claimed she hadn't in years. The man was younger, strikingly handsome, and unfamiliar. "She's been secretive, disappearing for hours. These pictures, they only confirm my fears," Daniel said, his voice breaking. Vincent nodded, his instinct already piecing together fragments of a story untold. "I'll take the case. But know this. The truth isn't always what we want it to be." The investigation began the next day. Vincent followed Eleanor discreetly, his trench coat blending into the urban tapestry of the city. She visited art galleries, boutiques, and a secluded library that seemed far removed from the life of a socialite. Always, she was accompanied by the same man from the photographs. Through observation and a few well-placed questions, Vincent learned the man's name: Lucas Harrington, an artist of moderate renown. But it was their conversations that intrigued Vincent the most, fragments about the mirror and the unveiling. A week into his surveillance, Vincent decided to confront Lucas. He found him in his art studio, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the smell of turpentine. Lucas was candid, almost too candid. "Eleanor and I are working on something," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "She's commissioning a piece that captures her true self. A surprise for her husband, a testament to their love." Vincent wasn't convinced. The secrecy, the stolen moments, it all felt too calculated. "Does Daniel know about this surprise?" Lucas hesitated. "No. It's meant to be unveiled on their anniversary. She wanted it to be perfect." As the days passed, Vincent's unease grew. He trailed Eleanor to a meeting with a jeweler, then to a hidden speakeasy where she exchanged envelopes with a man who radiated danger. Something didn't add up. The breakthrough came when Vincent managed to lift one of the envelopes. Inside were documents, a life insurance policy worth millions, with Daniel as the insured and Eleanor as the beneficiary. The realization hit him like a freight train. This wasn't about betrayal in love. It was betrayal in life. Vincent pieced together the truth. Eleanor and Lucas were conspiring, but it wasn't about art. The unveiling was a meticulously planned accident that would claim Daniel's life. The policy and Eleanor's newfound secrecy were all part of a deadly scheme. Vincent confronted Eleanor in her lavish home, the evidence laid bare on the table. She tried to deny it, her tears falling freely, but her eyes betrayed her guilt. "You loved him once," Vincent said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "What happened?" Eleanor's facade cracked. "Love fades, detective. But freedom is eternal." In the end, justice was swift. Eleanor and Lucas were arrested, their scheme unraveled. Daniel, heartbroken but alive, thanked Vincent for saving him from the shadows of his own life. As Vincent walked back into the rain that night, he couldn't help but glance at his reflection in a shattered window. Betrayal, he thought, was like a broken mirror. Every shard a different version of the same painful truth. The Shattered Mirror, Reflections of Truth. Weeks passed since Eleanor and Lucas's arrest. Daniel, though freed from the deadly scheme, was a man in ruins. The betrayal of the woman he had loved and the artist he had once admired left scars that no amount of wealth could heal. Detective Vincent Graves had moved on to other cases, but something about this one clung to him. Eleanor's words, "Freedom is eternal," replayed in his mind. There was a coldness in her confession that didn't sit right, as if there was a piece of the puzzle still missing. One stormy evening, as Vincent sat in his office sifting through old files, a package arrived. The courier, a wiry teenager, handed it over without a word and disappeared into the night. Vincent unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a single photograph of a painting, a mirror framed in gold, its surface cracked. Reflected in the shards was Eleanor's face, distorted and fragmented. At the bottom, a note scrawled in elegant handwriting. "Art reflects the soul, Vincent. Find the rest of the truth." It was unsigned. Vincent returned to Lucas's studio, now cordoned off by police tape. Breaking in was easy. The lock was barely secure. The studio was eerily quiet, the scent of paint and turpentine still lingering. As he searched the space, he found a hidden compartment behind a large canvas. Inside were dozens of sketches, each more disturbing than the last. There was Eleanor, but not as he had seen her before. These were grotesque, monstrous renditions of her, her eyes hollow, her smile twisted into something predatory. Scrawled notes in Lucas's hand described her as a muse of darkness and a soul fractured beyond repair. But it wasn't just Eleanor. There were sketches of other women, all with similar grotesque features, each labeled with dates. Vincent's stomach turned as he realized the dates matched a string of unexplained deaths over the past decade, each tied to a wealthy patron of Lucas's art. Lucas wasn't just an accomplice in Eleanor's scheme. He was a predator, using his art as a mask for something far more sinister. Vincent brought his findings to the authorities, but Lucas's arrest didn't lead to answers. It led to silence. The artist refused to speak, his smug smile infuriating. Eleanor, too, became uncooperative, her cool demeanor unbroken even in the face of damning evidence. As Vincent dug deeper, he uncovered a chilling connection. All the women Lucas had painted had been involved with a shadowy organization, a secretive group that manipulated wealthy patrons into their web of deceit. The art was a facade, a means to an end. Eleanor wasn't the architect of betrayal. She was a pawn, her desire for freedom exploited by forces she couldn't control. The trail led Vincent to a secluded mansion on the outskirts of the city, where an art auction was underway. The pieces on display were eerily similar to Lucas's style, each painting more haunting than the last. The attendees, a mix of the city's elite, seemed entranced. Infiltrating the event, Vincent discovered a hidden chamber filled with records, ledgers of transactions, blackmail, and schemes that spanned decades. The organization wasn't just about art. It was about power, control, and eliminating those who outlived their usefulness. Before he could escape with the evidence, he was confronted by the group's leader, a woman known only as Madame Duval. Her voice was smooth, her words sharp. "You've gone too far, detective," she said, her smile as cold as her gaze. But every great story needs a tragic hero. Vincent managed to escape the mansion, though not without injury. The records he retrieved were enough to expose the organization, though many of its members vanished into the shadows. Eleanor and Lucas's roles were re-examined. Eleanor, once painted as the villain, was revealed as a woman trapped by desperation. Lucas, however, was sentenced for his crimes, his twisted artistry laid bare for all to see. Daniel, still grappling with the betrayal, sold his company and left the city, seeking solace in the anonymity of the countryside. As for Vincent, the case left him changed. He had uncovered the truth, but at what cost? The lines between justice and survival had blurred, leaving him with more questions than answers. And yet, in his office, the photograph of the mirror remained, a reminder that every reflection holds secrets, and every truth casts a shadow. The shattered mirror. Into the shadows. Vincent Graves wasn't one to let loose ends dangle. The case of Eleanor, Lucas, and the mysterious organization haunted him like an itch he couldn't scratch. The records he had recovered from the auction were enough to dismantle parts of the network, but the true power behind it remained elusive. At its heart was Madame Duval, a woman as untouchable as a phantom and twice as dangerous. The ledgers painted a chilling picture, decades of manipulation, blackmail, and quiet assassinations, all cloaked under the guise of high society and the arts. Wealthy patrons would fall under the organization's sway, either lured by greed or coerced by their darkest secrets. When they had served their purpose, they were discarded through financial ruin, social exile, or worse. Vincent couldn't walk away now, not when he knew there were more lives at stake. The Web Titan's weeks turned into months as Vincent tracked whispers and rumors, slowly piecing together the organization's intricate web. He discovered that Madame Duval's true name was Marguerite Devereux, a French expatriate who had arrived in the city decades ago under a veil of mystery. She had charmed her way into the upper echelons of society, using her beauty, wit, and ruthless cunning to build her empire. But Marguerite wasn't just a socialite with a penchant for manipulation. She was a master of psychology, capable of turning even the most upright individuals into pawns. Her power lay not in brute force, but in her ability to exploit human weakness. One lead stood out, a man named Arthur Bellamy, a former banker who had served as the organization's financier. Bellamy had fallen out of favor years ago and vanished, presumed dead. But Vincent discovered that Bellamy was alive, hiding in a derelict lighthouse along the coast. The Lighthouse Confession. The lighthouse was a crumbling relic, battered by relentless waves. Inside, Vincent found Bellamy, a hollow shell of a man, his once wealthy demeanor replaced by paranoia and despair. "They'll kill me if they know I've spoken to you," Bellamy whispered, his hands trembling. "They already think you're dead," Vincent replied, his voice firm. "You're safe. For now. But I need to know everything about Duval." Bellamy spoke of the organization's inner workings, their secret meetings, and their ruthless methods. He revealed that Duval operated from a hidden estate known as Les Ombres, the Shadows, a secluded property surrounded by dense woods. It was here that she hosted her most exclusive gatherings, where the fates of her victims were sealed. "She doesn't just destroy lives," Bellamy said, his voice breaking. "She enjoys it. She's an artist of pain, and we were all her tools." The hunt for Les Ombres. Armed with this information, Vincent set out to find Les Ombres. The location was a well-kept secret, but he traced its existence through land records, bribing a clerk to reveal its location. The estate was hidden deep in the countryside, surrounded by high walls and patrolled by guards. Vincent knew he couldn't storm the place outright, so he devised a plan. Disguising himself as a wealthy art dealer, he used a fake identity and an introduction from one of Bellamy's contacts to infiltrate the organization's ranks. The gathering. At Les Ombres, Vincent was plunged into a world of decadence and deceit. The estate was a labyrinth of opulent rooms, each filled with priceless art and powerful people. Madame Duval held court like a queen, her every word dripping with charm and menace. Vincent played his part, blending in while secretly gathering evidence. He uncovered a ledger hidden in Duval's private quarters, containing the names of her next targets, people who had defied her or outlived their usefulness. But Duval wasn't fooled. She had seen through his facade the moment he arrived. "I must say, Detective Graves," she purred, cornering him in the grand hall, "your performance is commendable, but you should know by now that no one enters my world without my permission." The final confrontation. The room fell silent as guards surrounded Vincent. Duval's piercing eyes locked onto his. You're brave. I'll give you that. But bravery is a foolish thing when faced with inevitability. Vincent, undeterred, held up the ledger. This ends tonight, Duval. You can't hide behind your puppets forever. She laughed, a sound as cold as the winter wind. You think exposing me will stop this? I am not the organization. I am merely its reflection. Destroy me, and another will take my place. In the chaos that followed, Vincent managed to escape, setting fire to Les Ombres in the process. The estate burned as he fled into the night, the flames consuming decades of secrets. The aftermath. The destruction of Les Ombres sent shockwaves through the city. Madame Duval vanished, her fate unknown. The shattered mirror, the phantom's return. Months passed since the fiery demise of Les Ombres. The estate's ruins became a grim monument to the chaos Vincent had unleashed. The media spun wild tales. Some painted Vincent as a hero, others as a reckless vigilante. Yet amidst the public frenzy, the shadows whispered of something more sinister. Madame Duval had vanished, but her name lingered, spoken in hushed tones by those who once feared her. Rumors surfaced of a resurgence, a quieter, more insidious movement rising from the ashes. Vincent knew his battle wasn't over. A new lead one evening, as Vincent was nursing his drink, a package arrived at his office. This time it wasn't from a courier, but left anonymously at his door. Inside was a single black envelope sealed with crimson wax. Breaking the seal, Vincent found a single playing card, a queen of spades. On the back, written in elegant script, were the words, "You missed something at Les Ombres. Time to finish the game." Alongside the card was a photograph, the smoldering ruins of the estate, with a faint figure visible in the background. Though blurred, the figure's silhouette was unmistakable. It was Madame Duval. Returned to the ashes. Vincent returned to the ruins of Les Ombres under the cover of darkness. The estate had been abandoned, but the fire had not erased all its secrets. As he searched through the charred remains, he found a hidden staircase leading to an underground chamber. The chamber was untouched by the flames, its air thick with the scent of damp earth. Inside, Vincent discovered a vault filled with records, artifacts, and coded messages. Among them was a ledger far more comprehensive than the one he had retrieved before. This ledger revealed the organization's global reach, connections to politicians, corporations, and crime syndicates spanning continents. Madame Duval had not been a mere leader of a localized group. She had been a conduit for something far larger. At the center of the web was a name Vincent hadn't encountered before. The Gilded Circle. The Gilded Circle. The Gilded Circle was an ancient organization, older and more powerful than Vincent had imagined. It thrived on secrecy, pulling strings from behind the scenes to control wealth, power, and influence. Madame Duval had been one of their many operatives, a key figure but ultimately expendable. Through the ledger, Vincent uncovered a meeting scheduled to take place in Vienna, Austria, a gathering of the Circle's inner council. If he wanted to dismantle the organization, this was his chance to strike at its heart. Vienna and the masquerade. Vincent arrived in Vienna, his steps careful, his purpose clear. The meeting was set to occur during an exclusive masquerade ball at the Palais de Verre, a sprawling mansion known for its opulence and secrecy. Using the ledger, Vincent forged an invitation and assumed the identity of a disgraced diplomat rumored to be seeking redemption through the Circle. Disguised in a sharp suit and a mask of silver and black, he entered the ball, blending seamlessly into the crowd of elites. Inside, the atmosphere was intoxicating. Music swirled, champagne flowed, and whispers filled the air. Vincent scanned the room, his eyes locking onto familiar faces, figures from the ledger, their masks doing little to hide their identities. And then he saw her, Madame Duval, draped in a gown of crimson silk, her golden mask adorned with black feathers. She moved with her usual grace, her laughter a melody of control. The dance of shadows. Vincent approached her, his heart pounding but his demeanor calm. He extended a hand and she accepted, their dance weaving through the crowd. "Detective Graves," she said softly, her voice laced with amusement. "I must commend your persistence. Few men would dare follow me here." "And few women would leave such a trail of destruction," he replied, his tone measured. She smiled, a predator savoring the moment. "You see destruction, I see transformation. The weak fall and the strong rise. It's the way of the world." Their dance continued, a battle of words and wills. She spoke of the circle, its purpose to maintain balance through control. He countered with the lives ruined, the families destroyed. "You've seen only the surface," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you truly want to understand, you must go deeper. But be warned, the deeper you go, the harder it is to escape." The turning point. Before Vincent could press further, an explosion rocked the mansion. Chaos erupted as masked attendees scrambled for the exits. In the confusion, Duval slipped away, leaving Vincent with a cryptic warning. "The circle is watching, Vincent. You'll never escape their gaze." Amid the wreckage, Vincent found a clue left behind by Duval. A fragment of a map marked with coordinates leading to a remote location in the Swiss Alps. The shattered mirror. The ascent. Vincent Graves embarked on his journey to the Swiss Alps with a map and a growing sense of foreboding. The coordinates left by Madame Duval were no coincidence. She had wanted him to find this place, though her reasons remained shrouded in mystery. His investigation had shifted from chasing shadows in the city to braving the icy wilderness, where secrets lay buried beneath layers of snow and stone. The journey to the mountain. The coordinates led him to a remote alpine village named Grunwald, nestled in the shadow of a towering peak. The villagers were a quiet, suspicious lot, their eyes wary as Vincent asked about the mountain. An old man at the village tavern finally offered a cryptic warning. "They call it Der Stille Gipfel, the silent summit," he said, his voice low. "Those who climb it seeking answers rarely return, and if they do, they're not the same." Vincent dismissed the warning, but couldn't shake its chill. The ascent. Begins guided by the map, Vincent began his trek up the mountain. The air grew thinner, the cold biting through his layers. The trail was perilous, flanked by sheer drops and treacherous ice. About halfway up, he stumbled upon an abandoned outpost. A crumbling stone structure marked with the symbol of the Gilded Circle, a golden serpent devouring its own tail. Inside, he found remnants of equipment, journals in multiple languages, and a single photograph. The photo was of Madame Duval, younger and unmasked, standing with a group of men and women. On the back, scrawled in ink, were the words, "The First Circle. Truth lies within. The summit and the fortress." The path led Vincent to a fortress carved into the mountainside, its entrance hidden behind a frozen waterfall. The structure was both ancient and modern, stone walls reinforced with steel, cameras disguised as icicles. Vincent entered cautiously, his every step echoing in the icy corridors. The fortress was a repository of the Gilded Circle's history, its walls lined with paintings, documents, and artifacts. Deeper inside, he discovered a library filled with books on philosophy, psychology, and control. The organization's ideology became clear. They believed humanity needed guidance, even if it meant manipulation and sacrifice. The Chamber of Reflections. At the heart of the fortress lay a grand chamber, its centerpiece a massive mirror framed in gold. The surface shimmered unnaturally as if alive. Around it were carvings depicting the Ouroboros, the serpent consuming itself, symbolizing eternity and self-destruction. Madame Duval was waiting for him, her crimson gown a stark contrast to the icy blue light. "Welcome, detective," she said, her voice echoing. "You've come further than I expected." Vincent raised his gun, his grip steady. "This ends here, Duval. No more games." She smiled faintly. Do you really believe this is a game? Look around you. This mirror reflects the truth of humanity, the cycle of power and suffering. You think you're here to destroy us, but you're already part of the circle. You've been playing your role all along. The truth unveiled, Madame Duval motioned toward the mirror. Look into it, Vincent. See the truth for yourself. Reluctantly, he stepped forward, his reflection shifting and distorting. The mirror showed him flashes of his life, his successes, his failures, his darkest moments. But it also revealed something deeper, a pattern of manipulation, events that had led him to this moment. The cases he'd solved, the clues he'd found, even his pursuit of Duval, they had all been orchestrated. You were never chasing me, she said softly. You were being guided to this very place, to this choice. The choice Duval extended her hand. Join us, Vincent. Use your skills to shape the world for the better. Or destroy this place and plunge humanity into chaos. The circle isn't just an organization, it's an idea. You can't kill an idea, but you can become part of it. Vincent's mind raced. Was she telling the truth, or was this another layer of deception? The weight of his actions, the lives affected by the gilded circle, bore down on him. He had a decision to make. Join the circle and use their power to enact change from within, risking his own moral compass. Destroy the fortress and scatter the circle's resources, knowing they might rebuild stronger. Walk away, taking the secrets with him, leaving the battle for another time. The turning point Vincent's hand hovered over the mirror's edge, his reflection staring back at him. The Ouroboros seemed to pulse, as if alive, waiting for his decision. The shattered mirror, the betrayal within. As Vincent grappled with the weight of his choices atop the silent summit, he had no idea that betrayal had struck closer to home than he ever imagined. His relentless pursuit of truth and justice had blinded him to the cracks forming in his personal life, cracks that Eleanor, his wife, had widened once again. The return to the city Vincent descended the mountain, weary and torn. He had chosen to destroy the fortress, setting off a chain reaction that collapsed the structure into the icy depths of the mountain. The gilded circle's secrets were buried, for now, but he knew the fight wasn't over. He returned to the city, eager for solace and perhaps a glimmer of normalcy. But when he stepped into his apartment, he was met with an unsettling silence. The air felt heavy, and something about the space felt wrong. Eleanor was sitting at the dining table, a glass of wine in hand. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. "You're home," she said softly. "I am," Vincent replied, his voice cautious. "We need to talk." "So do I," she said, her eyes darting to a stack of papers on the table. The papers Vincent approached the table, his stomach sinking as he saw what was spread out before her. Photographs, receipts, and letters. At first he thought they were related to his investigation, but as he examined them, the truth hit him like a blow. The photographs showed Eleanor with another man, a man Vincent recognized as David Kessler, a lawyer who had once represented some of the city's most corrupt elites. The receipts detailed lavish dinners, hotel stays, and gifts. The letters were love notes, written in Eleanor's unmistakable handwriting. Vincent's hands trembled as he looked at her. "You said it was over. After Lucas, you said you wanted to rebuild what we had." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I thought I did, Vincent. But you were never here. You were always chasing shadows, diving headfirst into danger, leaving me alone to pick up the pieces." "So this is my fault?" he said, his voice rising. "No," she said firmly. "It's mine. I was weak, I was angry, and I found someone who made me feel seen. But it doesn't change the fact that I still love you." A deeper betrayal. The conversation unfolded. Vincent's sharp instincts began to pick up on inconsistencies in Eleanor's story. David Kessler wasn't just a lover, he had ties to the Gilded Circle. His name had appeared in the ledger Vincent had retrieved months ago. This wasn't just an affair, was it? Vincent said, his voice cold. You knew who he was. You knew what he was involved in. Eleanor's silence was damning. You were feeding him information about me, Vincent said, his anger boiling over. You've been working against me this whole time. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. I didn't mean for it to happen. At first it was just a way to keep us safe. They threatened me, Vincent. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd destroy everything. I didn't know how deep it went until it was too late. The breaking point, Vincent stepped back, his mind racing. The woman he had fought to protect, the woman he had forgiven once before, had betrayed him again, not just as a wife, but as a partner in his fight against the shadows. I gave you everything, he said, his voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and rage. I forgave you. I trusted you. And you turned me into a pawn. I didn't mean to, Eleanor cried. I wanted to tell you, but I was scared. I thought I could fix it, but David, he's dangerous, Vincent. He's not like the others. He's a part of something bigger. Her words only deepened the wound. Vincent couldn't tell if she was being honest or if this was another manipulation. A choice of the heart Eleanor reached for him, but he stepped away. I need time, he said, his voice hollow, and you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Vincent left the apartment, the weight of her betrayal pressing heavily on his chest. He had faced countless enemies, but this felt different. It wasn't just about the Gilded Circle or Madame Duval, it was about trust, loyalty, and the cost of the life he had chosen. The road ahead, as Vincent walked through the darkened streets, he knew one thing. His fight wasn't just against the shadows out there. It was against the shadows within, both his own and those of the people he loved. Would he be able to forgive Eleanor again? Or would this betrayal mark the end of their story? One thing was certain. Vincent Graves was a man who thrived in the gray, and the choices ahead would test him like never before. The shattered mirror. Betrayal's shadow. Vincent Graves walked through the city streets, his breath misting in the cold night air. His mind raced as fragments of the truth clashed with memories of a life he thought he understood. Eleanor's betrayal wasn't just personal, it was strategic, tied directly to the Gilded Circle and the enemies he'd been battling for months. He stopped beneath a flickering streetlight, pulling out his phone. He didn't trust Eleanor's words entirely, but one thing was clear. David Kessler had to be dealt with. A lead in the dark. Back in his office, Vincent combed through his files. Kessler's name was more than just a footnote. He had represented multiple clients who were front companies for the Gilded Circle. The lawyer was a linchpin, someone who brokered deals and laundered money for the organization. Vincent opened his encrypted laptop, searching for any recent activity that could lead him to Kessler. His contacts in the underworld came through with a tip. Kessler was hosting a private gala at an exclusive penthouse downtown. The gala wasn't just a social event, it was a meeting of power players. If Vincent wanted answers, he'd have to crash the party. The gala intrusion. Vincent arrived at the penthouse in a tailored suit, his disguise impeccable. A false identity and a borrowed invitation got him past the security detail. The event was every bit as opulent as he'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, champagne flutes, and a sea of elites in designer attire. Kessler was at the center of it all, his charm on full display as he entertained guests. Eleanor wasn't there. Vincent had made sure of that. But the tension in the room suggested that not everyone was here for the wine and conversation. Vincent slipped through the crowd, eavesdropping on snippets of conversation. He pieced together enough to confirm his suspicions. Kessler was facilitating a massive deal involving one of the Circle's hidden accounts. A dangerous confrontation. As the evening progressed, Vincent cornered Kessler on the balcony. The lawyer turned, his smirk fading as he recognized Vincent. "Well, well," Kessler said, swirling his drink. "The infamous Detective Graves. Shouldn't you be licking your wounds somewhere?" "I'm here to make sure you answer for what you've done," Vincent replied, his voice low and deadly. Kessler chuckled. "You think you've got it all figured out? You're a pawn, Graves. Always have been. The Circle thrives on people like you, idealists who think they can fight the system. But the truth? You're just another cog in the machine." Vincent stepped closer. "The machine's breaking, Kessler. And you're next." Before Kessler could respond, a scream erupted from inside. Chaos broke out as masked intruders stormed the gala, armed and efficient. The ambush. Vincent reacted instantly, drawing his concealed weapon and pushing Kessler against the wall. "Stay here if you want to live," he hissed, before moving to neutralize the threat. The intruders weren't ordinary criminals. Their precision and coordination screamed professional mercenaries. Vincent realized they weren't there to rob the party. They were there to eliminate Kessler. Through the chaos, Vincent fought his way back to the lawyer, who was cowering behind an overturned table. "You're coming with me," Vincent barked, dragging him toward the emergency exit. As they escaped into the service elevator, Kessler's bravado crumbled. "They're going to kill me," he stammered. "They might," Vincent replied coldly, "but not before I get the truth." The interrogation. Vincent took Kessler to a safe house, tying him to a chair in the dimly lit basement. He didn't have time for pleasantries. "Start talking," Vincent demanded. "Who sent them? And what's the Circle planning next?" Kessler hesitated, his arrogance replaced by fear. "You don't understand," he said. "The Circle isn't just an organization. It's an idea, a system. You take me out, another will replace me. You burn one ledger, they'll create two more. It's endless." "Then tell me how to end it," Vincent growled, slamming his fist on the table. Kessler finally broke. He revealed that the Circle's next move involved a massive financial operation, an attempt to crash global markets and buy out key industries at rock-bottom prices. The operation was codenamed Project Eclipse, and it was set to go live in less than a week. The hub for the operation was a secure server farm outside the city, guarded by private security and laced with countermeasures. The final betrayal. As Vincent processed the information, Kessler's phone buzzed in his pocket. Vincent grabbed it, seeing a single message on the screen. "Tell Graves the truth about Eleanor." Vincent's blood ran cold. "What truth?" he demanded, shaking Kessler. The lawyer smirked weakly. "You think she's just a victim? She's deeper in than you know. She's not just some pawn, Graves. She's a queen. And she's playing her own game." Vincent staggered back, his mind reeling. Could Eleanor have been manipulating him from the start? Kessler's laughter filled the room. "You wanted the truth, detective. There it is. Now what are you going to do about it?" The crossroads. Vincent stood at a crossroads. He could pursue Eleanor and uncover the depth of her involvement, or he could focus on dismantling Project Eclipse and striking a critical blow to the Gilded Circle. The clock was ticking, and his choices would determine not only his future but the fate of countless lives. The shattered mirror. Confronting shadows. Vincent Graves couldn't ignore the gnawing possibility that Eleanor had been playing a far more complex game. Kessler's words echoed in his mind as he drove through the city, his jaw clenched, his thoughts racing. He needed answers. About Eleanor's involvement, about Project Eclipse, and about whether his relentless pursuit of justice had blinded him to the truth hiding in plain sight. The confrontation. Vincent returned to the apartment late that night. The lights were on, and Eleanor was sitting on the couch clutching a glass of whiskey. She looked up as he entered, her face a mix of relief and dread. "Vincent," she began, standing. "Don't!" he snapped, his voice sharper than a blade. "Not this time. No lies, no excuses. I need the truth, Eleanor. How deep are you in?" She hesitated, her grip tightening around the glass. "I don't know what you mean." "Kessler told me everything," Vincent interrupted, stepping closer. "The messages, the coordination, the betrayals. How long have you been part of this, Eleanor? Was any of it real?" Her eyes filled with tears, but there was something else in her expression, a flicker of defiance. "You want the truth, Vincent?" she said, her voice trembling. "Fine, I was part of it. At first I didn't have a choice. They came to me, threatened me, used me. But then I realized something. The Circle isn't just some evil cabal. They believe in what they're doing. And in some twisted way, it makes sense." Vincent recoiled, his heart sinking. "You believe in them?" "I believe that the world is broken," she said, her voice gaining strength. "And you're so obsessed with being the hero that you can't see the bigger picture. They offered me a chance to be part of something bigger, to make a difference." The breaking point. Vincent's fists clenched at his sides. "You made a difference, all right. You destroyed everything we had, everything I thought we were." Eleanor's tears finally spilled over. "Do you think this was easy for me? I loved you, Vincent. I still do. But love doesn't fix everything, and neither does playing detective while the world burns." He turned away, trying to process her words. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "You can still walk away from this. Leave the Circle, leave the fight. We can start over." Vincent turned back to her, his eyes hard. "Walk away? After everything you've done? After everything they've done?" She didn't answer. A grim decision. Vincent stepped back, his resolve hardening. "You're not just a part of this anymore, Eleanor. You're the reason it's still standing. You've made your choice." "And what about you?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Are you any different? You've sacrificed everything for this crusade. How many lives have you destroyed in the name of justice?" Her words stung, but he didn't waver. "I may not be perfect," he said, "but I know where I stand, and it's not with the Circle." He walked to the door, pausing only for a moment. "Goodbye, Eleanor." The mission to stop Eclipse. The next morning, Vincent put Eleanor out of his mind. He had a mission: stop Project Eclipse and dismantle the Circle's operation. Kessler's intel led him to an abandoned industrial site outside the city. The server farm was hidden beneath layers of reinforced steel and guarded by a private security team. Breaking in would require precision, stealth, and a willingness to risk everything. Vincent called in favors from trusted allies, old friends who owed him their lives. Together, they formed a plan to infiltrate the facility and shut down the servers before the Circle could execute their plan. The final battle. The operation unfolded like clockwork, but nothing ever went entirely as planned. Security was tighter than expected, and Vincent's team found themselves in a deadly firefight. Vincent fought his way to the control room, his heart pounding. As he worked to shut down the servers, an alarm blared. The Circle's countermeasures had been activated, and the servers began to self-destruct. In the chaos, a video feed flickered on one of the monitors. Eleanor's face appeared, her expression unreadable. "You should have joined us, Vincent," she said. "Now, you'll never understand what we could have accomplished." The collapse. Vincent ignored her taunts, focusing on disabling the servers. As the facility crumbled around him, he managed to extract critical data, enough to cripple the Circle's operation, at least temporarily. He escaped with seconds to spare, watching as the industrial site collapsed into a plume of smoke and fire. Aftermath. Back in the city, Vincent sat in his dimly lit office, staring at the data he'd recovered. The Circle was wounded but not dead. And Eleanor, she was gone. For now. Vincent knew he couldn't rest. The fight wasn't over, and the shadows were still out there, waiting. The shattered mirror. The endless hunt. The war against the Gilded Circle was far from over. Vincent Graves, armed with the stolen data from the collapsing server farm, delved deeper into the organization's labyrinthine structure. Each piece of intel uncovered a new layer of corruption, each name another mask hiding a network of power and influence. But the deeper he went, the more the shadows closed in on him. Betrayal had already claimed his wife. How much more of himself would he lose before the end? A new alliance Vincent's hunt led him to an unlikely ally. Camille Hart, a tech prodigy turned whistleblower who had worked for one of the Circle's shell companies. Camille claimed to have insider knowledge of Project Eclipse's true scope, knowledge that could expose key players in the Circle's hierarchy. At first, Vincent was skeptical. Trust wasn't something he gave lightly anymore. But Camille's intel checked out, and her fearless resolve reminded him of the fire he'd once seen in Eleanor. "You're not doing this for glory," Vincent said during their first meeting. "No," Camille replied. "I'm doing it because someone has to. And because they ruined my life too." Together, they formed a fragile partnership, hacking into hidden networks, planting surveillance devices, and unraveling the Circle's operations one thread at a time. The new betrayal as weeks turned into months. Vincent and Camille closed in on a high-ranking Circle operative known only as Argent. Argent was the architect of Project Eclipse and the key to dismantling what remained of the operation. The chase led them to a secluded villa in the Mediterranean where Argent was rumored to be hiding. Camille's tech expertise got them past the perimeter defenses, and Vincent's tactical skills neutralized the guards. Inside, they found Argent, a man in his late 50s with piercing gray eyes. But as Vincent prepared to confront him, the air shifted. Camille stepped forward, her gun aimed not at Argent, but at Vincent. "I'm sorry, Vincent," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't have a choice." Vincent's heart sank. "You've been working for them this whole time?" "No," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Not at first, but they found me. They threatened my family. I thought I could help you and keep them safe, but they're everywhere, Vincent," Argent smirked. "She's smarter than you gave her credit for, Graves. You think you're a hero, but you're just another relic fighting a losing battle." A deadly standoff Vincent's gun was trained on Camille, but he hesitated. He saw the fear in her eyes, the conflict in her expression. She wasn't like Eleanor. She wasn't driven by ambition or ideology. She was desperate. "Camille," he said softly, "you don't have to do this. We can find another way. Together." Argent laughed. "Touching. But the girl knows the truth, Graves. You can't win, and neither can she." Camille's hand shook, her finger hovering over the trigger. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then she turned, firing at Argent instead. The shot hit him square in the chest, and the man crumpled to the floor. The escape. The gunshot triggered alarms, and Vincent and Camille were forced to fight their way out of the villa. The betrayal lingered between them, unspoken but undeniable. When they finally reached safety, Vincent confronted her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was scared," Camille admitted. "Scared of losing my family, scared of losing myself, and scared that you'd see me the way you see Eleanor." Vincent sighed, his anger tempered by exhaustion. "You're not Eleanor, but trust, that's something we'll have to rebuild." The war rages. On with Argent dead, the Circle was dealt another crippling blow. But Vincent knew they were far from defeated. The data they recovered from the villa hinted at another major operation, one that could make Project Eclipse look like a minor skirmish. As he stared at the encrypted files, Vincent felt the weight of his journey. Betrayal had become a constant companion, but it hadn't broken him. If anything, it had steeled his resolve. He glanced at Camille, who was already working to decode the files. She was a reminder that even in a world of shadows, there were still people willing to fight. "I'm not giving up," Vincent said. Camille looked up, her eyes filled with determination. "Neither am I." The Shattered Mirror. Partners in Shadows. The partnership between Vincent and Camille was forged in the fires of necessity, but tempered by the mutual understanding of what they had lost. Though betrayal had marked their pasts, the tenuous trust between them became a lifeline as they dove deeper into the Gilded Circle's operations. The uneasy alliance, Camille worked tirelessly, her fingers a blur over her keyboard as she decrypted the files recovered from Argent's villa. Vincent watched her from across the room, the hum of her computer filling the silence. "Do you always work this fast?" he asked, breaking the stillness. "Speed's the only advantage I've got," she replied without looking up. "The Circle has resources I can't even imagine. If I don't stay ahead, I'm dead. Simple as that." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "You're not alone in this anymore." She paused, her eyes flicking up to meet his. "I know, but that doesn't make it any less terrifying." A glimpse of humanity over time. Vincent began to see Camille not just as a partner, but as a person burdened by guilt and fear. She was brilliant, resourceful, and fearless in the face of danger. But there was a fragility beneath her surface that she tried to hide. One night, as they worked late in a safe house, Vincent found her staring at a photo on her phone. A picture of her parents and younger brother. "They don't even know where I am," she said softly. "The Circle threatened them, but I had to disappear to keep them safe. Sometimes I wonder if they hate me for it." "They don't," Vincent said, his voice steady. "They'd hate the Circle for putting you in that position. And one day, they'll understand why you did what you did." Camille smiled faintly. "You really believe that?" "I have to," he replied. "Otherwise, what's the point?" Building trust, their bond grew as they tackled mission after mission, uncovering the Circle's operations in banking, technology, and even politics. Camille's tech skills complemented Vincent's street smarts, making them an effective team. During one operation, they infiltrated a high-security data center in Berlin. Camille guided Vincent through the facility via earpiece, her voice calm and precise as he navigated laser grids and security patrols. "Left corridor, second door," she instructed. "You sure?" Vincent asked. "Positive," she said. "Unless you'd rather test your luck with the guard coming your way." Vincent smirked. "I'll take your word for it." Moments later, he was at the server, downloading critical files. As he escaped undetected, he couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly they worked together. Shadows of the past. Despite their success, the ghosts of their pasts continued to haunt them. Camille's betrayal at Argent's villa lingered in Vincent's mind, even though she had saved his life in the end. One evening, as they reviewed intel, Camille spoke up. "You still don't trust me, do you?" Vincent hesitated. "It's not that simple." "It's okay," she said. "I get it. Trust isn't something you just give away after what you've been through. But I need you to know that I'm here because I believe in this fight. In you." Her words struck a chord with him. "I do trust you," he admitted. "But I've learned the hard way that trust doesn't mean letting your guard down. It means standing beside someone even when you know they could hurt you. And I'm standing beside you." Camille nodded, her expression unreadable. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." The next step as they decrypted the files, a chilling revelation emerged. The Circle was planning a new operation codenamed Iron Veil. It involved a coordinated cyber attack on global energy grids, designed to plunge entire nations into chaos. Camille's face paled as she read the details. "If they pull this off, it'll make Project Eclipse look like a prank." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Then we stop it. Together." Camille looked at him, her determination mirroring his own. "We're going to need help. A lot of it." Vincent nodded. "Then let's find the right people. The Circle thinks they're untouchable, but they've never faced a team like us." Forged in Fire A's. Vincent and Camille prepared for the battle ahead. Their partnership became a beacon of hope in the darkness. Though their trust was imperfect, it was real, and it gave them the strength to face an enemy that thrived on fear and division. They weren't just fighting the circle anymore, they were fighting for a future where trust, even fragile, could endure. The Shattered Mirror. War Within. The battle against the Gilded Circle had become all-consuming for both Vincent and Camille. The stakes were higher than ever before, but so too were the personal costs. In the darkened corners of their minds, the war wasn't just against an organization, it was against the isolation, guilt, and trauma that followed them like shadows. Vincent's burden of justice. Vincent Graves had never been one to show weakness. His entire life had been shaped by the pursuit of justice, a relentless drive to right the wrongs of the world, to tear down the hidden powers that preyed on the innocent. But as the war with the circle dragged on, he began to feel the weight of his own choices. The betrayals, Eleanor, Camille, had left deep scars, ones that he struggled to ignore. His mind was a battlefield of its own, torn between the belief that there was still hope for redemption and the growing fear that the very fight he was waging might be the thing that destroyed him. Late one night, after a particularly grueling operation, Vincent sat alone in his apartment. The silence was suffocating, his thoughts spiraling. He stared at the photo of his younger self, the man who believed in justice and truth with all his heart. "What happened to you?" he whispered to the empty room. He had once believed in fighting for others, but now every action seemed to push him further from those he cared about. He was more consumed by the mission than ever, losing touch with the human connections that had once grounded him. He thought of Eleanor, of the love they once shared and how it had turned to dust. He thought of Camille, whose betrayal still stung despite her efforts to make amends. But most of all, he thought of the price of this war, the toll it had taken on his soul. Camille's silent war. Camille Hart fought battles of her own, ones that Vincent couldn't see. Her mind was a maze of conflicting emotions: loyalty to Vincent, fear for her family, guilt for her past mistakes. She had chosen this fight, knowing it would destroy everything she had ever known, yet she hadn't realized how much of herself she would lose in the process. She had always been the protector, the one who kept secrets to shield those she loved. But now, her secrets were threatening to consume her. Camille sat in front of her computer late one night, scanning the latest intel, but her eyes were unfocused. The flashing text on the screen blurred, her thoughts drifting back to her family. She hadn't spoken to them in months, not since she had been forced to disappear. Their calls and messages went unanswered, but she couldn't bring herself to explain why she had left, why she had chosen to fight the circle. "Am I doing the right thing?" she whispered to herself. "Is this fight worth it?" She thought of her brother, who was still a child when she last saw him. The pain of leaving him behind, the fear that he might one day hate her for the choices she had made, gnawed at her every day. And then there was Vincent. Despite the trust they were slowly rebuilding, Camille couldn't shake the feeling that he viewed her as a liability. His eyes always seemed to search her face for signs of weakness, of betrayal. No matter how many times she proved herself, no matter how many times she saved his life, she felt the weight of his doubt pressing down on her. The weight of isolation. As their alliance grew stronger, so too did their isolation. They had become so focused on the mission, on dismantling the circle, that they lost sight of everything else. Vincent and Camille were no longer just partners. They were two people driven by fear and guilt, bound together by the weight of the war they waged. One evening, after a harrowing escape from a circle safe house, Vincent and Camille found themselves sitting in a safe house in Prague, silent, exhausted. The flickering light of a single candle cast long shadows on the walls, reflecting their own weary expressions. "You know, we never really talk about anything," Camille said, breaking the silence. "We're always so focused on the next mission. The next step. But we don't talk about who we are, what we're fighting for beyond this. Vincent met her eyes. You think we have time for that? No, Camille replied softly. I don't think we have time for anything. But maybe that's why we're losing ourselves. We're so focused on stopping them that we're forgetting what it means to actually live. The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, it seemed as though the whole world had frozen. No missions, no circle, no betrayals. Just two people, lost in the very war they were fighting. Vincent shifted uncomfortably, his eyes falling to the floor. I'm not the man I used to be, he muttered. Camille nodded. I'm not either. The crucible of decisions. As the mission against the Gilded Circle reached a critical point, both Vincent and Camille faced impossible decisions. But the deeper they dug, the more they found themselves questioning the cost of their crusade. Could they really stop this global catastrophe without losing themselves entirely? One night, Camille came to Vincent with a proposition. She had uncovered a way to destroy the Iron Veil operation, but it would require a dangerous and irreversible choice. She could hack into the system, but it would leave her exposed, unable to return to the fight. I'm not asking you to let me do this, she said. I'm just telling you that it's the only way to stop them. Vincent's gut twisted at the thought of losing her, of losing the one person who had stayed beside him through the darkest moments of this war. But he knew what needed to be done. You're sure? He asked, his voice strained. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Camille replied, her eyes filled with resolve. The silence between them was deafening, the weight of the decision pressing down on both of them. In the end, there was no choice. Vincent nodded, his heart heavy. Then let's finish this. Endurance. As the battle against the Circle intensified, Vincent and Camille continued to wage their personal wars. They were soldiers fighting for a future they couldn't yet see, but no longer could they ignore the wounds they carried. The fight wasn't just for the world, it was for the pieces of themselves they had left behind in the pursuit of justice. And somewhere, in the midst of their struggles, Vincent realized something. Maybe it wasn't the victory that mattered most. Maybe it was the strength to continue fighting, despite everything they had lost.